Mother purposely gained weight to please her boyfriend, jeopardizing her health, but confronting them almost got me kicked out. It all began sometime last spring or summer, just a few months after my mom started dating her current boyfriend, Mike. Before then, she was in pretty decent shape. Growing up, my mom tended toward being a bit overweight, but after she and my dad split up, about 2.5 years ago, she really started prioritizing her health. We bonded as running and diet partners, and she even made it into the 130s, though her weight still fluctuated from time to time. Then, around late January last year, she met Mike. When I first met him, he seemed like a decent enough guy, not really standing out but not setting off alarms either. Things got serious between them quickly, and I couldn't help but notice how important this was for my mom. He was the first real relationship she'd had since splitting with my dad. Everything seemed normal heading into that summer, until just after my high school graduation in June. That's when everything started to change. She sat me down, clearly nervous, and said she needed to have a serious talk. She told me she'd be cutting back on our runs because she wanted to put weight back on, she missed being curvier, and Mike had said he preferred women who were more voluptuous. My mom said she wanted to let go and stop worrying so much about her weight. It seemed like a small thing at the time. I trusted her judgment, figuring she knew what she was doing, so I didn't press the issue or discourage her. She looked content, and I was happy to see her relationship going so well. Almost overnight, our runs dropped from 4 or 5 times a week to barely 1 or 2, and she started walking instead of running. At the same time, she stopped being as strict with her diet. Foods and drinks she had cut out, sodas, junk food, crept back in, and the weight started to return. By the time I left for college that fall, she had put on about 15 or 20 pounds, almost back to her pre-divorce weight. But honestly, I wasn't worried. She carried the extra pounds well and still seemed thrilled with how things were going with Mike. After that, I barely saw or spoke to my mom until I came home for fall break. That visit hit hard. She had put on even more weight, and I tried to nudge her toward healthier habits. I invited her on runs, but she always had an excuse: the weather, being too tired, or sometimes Mike would step in and discourage her. I also saw her diet had gone downhill fast. Almost everything she ate was fast food or pure junk. Mike didn't help. He'd bring home unhealthy food and never anything green or remotely nutritious. Still, I bit my tongue, not feeling like it was my place to interfere just yet. I asked her if everything with Mike was really okay, or if something was bothering her. She insisted all was fine, so I let it go and went back to school. By Thanksgiving, though, I couldn't ignore what I saw. She was even bigger, and her eating had gotten out of control. Even considering the holiday, she was eating nonstop. Mike was always handing her snacks or meals. Sometimes she'd say she was full, and he'd make a scene until she caved and ate whatever he brought her. Finally, I couldn't keep quiet. I told her I was scared for her. Her relentless weight gain could ruin her health. She insisted she was simply enjoying herself, happy to have the freedom not to worry about her weight. At first, Mike had told her he didn't mind if she gained another 20 pounds, but then it became more. He actually encouraged it and wanted her to keep getting bigger and curvier. My heart sank when my mom said Mike had helped her realize she was meant to be an overweight woman. She was convinced she looked better larger and told me she planned to keep gaining until she reached around 200 pounds. That's when I lost it. I told her she was literally eating herself to death, that she needed to eat better, exercise more, and reverse course before it was too late. We had a huge fight, and I left early, returning to school sooner than planned. Not long after, she messaged me. She said, in no uncertain terms, that she was an adult and would not be lectured or controlled by her own child. She told me that if I wanted to live under her roof, I had to respect her choices and not interfere, especially with Mike. To drive the point home, Mike sent me an email repeating the same message: respect what's happening between him and my mom, or stay away. By then he'd moved into our house, and I felt like I was losing my mother to him. So I decided to spend Christmas and New Year's with my dad's family, avoiding home for winter and the whole spring semester. Now, I've just finished school and moved back in with my mom for the summer. I'd kept up through Facebook and could see she had continued to gain weight, but nothing prepared me for what I saw when I came home. I guess she's at least 200 pounds now, probably more. Everything about her is bigger, to the point where I almost don't recognize my own mother, especially in her face. She's almost completely sedentary. Other than her office job, she hardly moves. When she comes home, she collapses on the couch and just eats and eats. Mike is always there, bringing her more food and encouraging her, and my mom seems happy to gorge herself every night until she has a stomachache. It shocks me how much she eats now. She wakes up in the middle of the night and raids the kitchen for a snack, which is never just a snack, but a whole extra meal. What's more, they don't even try to hide that my mom is actively trying to get fatter. Mike pushes her to buy larger sizes of clothing so she has room to grow, and she just smiles and agrees. I've even overheard them talking about trading in her car for something bigger, more comfortable for her as she continues to gain weight. It all feels surreal. I know this is what they both want, but I can't shake the fear of what this unchecked weight gain is doing, and will do, to her health. My mom's weight is really starting to impact her health, and it breaks my heart to watch the changes happening right in front of me. Lately, she gets out of breath so easily that even simple things, like walking from the far end of a parking lot to the store, Leave her complaining and winded. She's developed minor knee and back problems, and she's always tired now. I can see where this is heading, and I know deep in my gut that if she keeps gaining weight, it's only going to get worse from here. But she doesn't see it the way I do. She blames these problems on age and her asthma instead of acknowledging that her weight plays any role in her discomfort. I feel so afraid. Sometimes the fear is a tight knot in my throat, that she's going to die young, and I'll lose her before I'm ready. The thought of her leaving me, all because she won't see what's happening, is almost unbearable. Despite knowing that this was a sensitive topic, I tried bringing it up again the other night over dinner. I asked whether maybe we could try eating fewer fast foods and avoid so much junk food. I gently suggested that maybe she could stop her active attempts to gain even more weight. She got so angry with me. She insisted I was a vain person, accused me of not understanding that not every woman wants to be a shapeless rail, and told me that some women want to have curves. I tried to explain, but she wouldn't hear it. That was when Mike, her boyfriend, came into my room. He wasn't angry, he dropped his words in a calm, deliberate way that made the threat in them even stronger. He told me if I brought it up again, Mom and he both agreed that I'd need to find another place to live for the summer. Then he told me I had to accept my mom the way she is, a larger woman who will only get larger. Hearing him say that made my blood run cold. When I mentioned that she had said she would stop gaining around 200, he told me she and he had decided together that she should just keep gaining beyond that. I got angry, but I was scared, too. I didn't argue anymore because I truly believe he'd kick me out, and what was worse, I wasn't sure if my mom would try to stop him. I reached out to my sister, hoping she'd help, but she lives in another state and doesn't get along with our mom. She didn't have advice or comfort to offer. My dad wants nothing to do with this either. He's got his own life now with a fiancée. I even thought about talking to some of my mom's old friends, the ones she was close with before she started dating Mike, but I barely see them anymore. Since Mike came into the picture, she's drifted away from nearly everyone but him. Would they even listen to me, or feel comfortable getting involved? I feel so trapped. There's no one else in my mom's family I can turn to, no one close enough to help. I'm desperate for any help or advice, anything that might make a difference before it's too late. Update 1. I read and reread all the advice that I'd gotten, turning it over in my mind countless times, still paralyzed by uncertainty. Should I say something and risk being thrown out of my mother's house? Or would silence mean standing by and watching her hurt herself at Mike's urging? In the end, I couldn't ignore it any longer. My mom's life and her health meant too much for me to do nothing while she slowly spiraled. I knew, though, that if I lost my temper like I had in the past, I'd only push her further away. So I tried to be strategic this time, to plan ahead, to avoid anger. I remembered a suggestion I'd seen: invite her to lunch, just the two of us. If Mike wasn't around, maybe she'd actually hear me out. Before we met, I printed out articles, information about abusive relationships and about feeder relationships, just in case she might read them later, even if she wouldn't listen to me now. At lunch, I pretty much repeated what I'd told her before. I was scared for her health. I told her I wanted her to be around, that I loved her, but also that I respected her as my mom and as an adult capable of making her own choices. I just wanted her to have all the facts, to truly make an informed decision. Whatever she chose, I promised I would respect it. She didn't take it well. My mom got upset quickly, especially when I mentioned feeder relationships. She insisted Mike just liked curvy women, suggested the articles and my worries had nothing to do with her, and accused me of being jealous, even insecure about Mike. She said some other painful things too, and adamantly denied any abuse, insisted her weight wasn't causing health problems, despite all evidence to the contrary. When we got home, the fallout was immediate. She told me I had 2 days to move out. That's how I ended up spending the rest of my summer at my dad's house. I didn't see my mom again until 2 weeks ago, when I had to return for my things. Stepping back inside was jarring. Not only had she gained even more weight, but the house itself was almost unrecognizable. Takeout boxes and food containers littered every surface. It looked like nothing had been cleaned since the day I left. All I wanted was to grab my stuff and go, but before I could escape, my mom stopped me. She told me she had news. Mike had proposed, she'd said yes, and they'd be married soon. I'd be welcome at the wedding, she said, but only if I apologized to both of them for what I'd said. She added that they were planning to move to Oregon, where Mike's family lives. Since she has no close friends or family left here anymore, thanks mostly to Mike's influence, she thought it would be a good chance for a fresh start. I was floored. I barely managed to say I was glad she was happy. The truth is, I feel helpless now. I want to do something, anything, to help her, but I don't know what else is left. I just have to hope that one day, maybe, she'll realize what Mike is doing and reach out for help. Until then, I wait. Update 2. It's been 3 months since I last posted, and I honestly wasn't sure I'd ever update again. But something happened last week that changed everything, and I need to get this out. My mom and Mike got married in October, a small ceremony in Oregon that I didn't attend. I couldn't bring myself to watch her promise her life to someone I was convinced was slowly killing her. We hadn't spoken since that day I went to collect my things, and the silence was eating me alive. Every day I wondered if she was okay, if she was still gaining weight, if she was even still alive. Then, 2 weeks ago, I got a Facebook friend request from someone named Jessica. Her profile showed she lived in the same Oregon town where my mom had moved. The message that came with a request made my heart stop. "Hi, I think we need to talk about your mom. I work with her at her new job. Can you call me?" I called her that night, hands shaking. Jessica works as a nurse at the medical clinic where my mom had started as a receptionist. She'd seen my mom struggling, getting winded walking from the parking lot, having to take breaks going up a single flight of stairs, constantly complaining about back and knee pain. But what really worried Jessica was how my mom looked. She estimated my mom was now well over 250 pounds, maybe pushing 280. "I wouldn't normally reach out like this," Jessica said, "but yesterday your mom collapsed at work. She was unconscious for almost 2 minutes. When the paramedics came, her blood pressure was through the roof, and her blood sugar was dangerously high. They wanted to take her to the hospital, but she refused. She kept saying Mike would be angry if she went without telling him first. That phrase hit me like a punch to the gut. She needed permission to seek medical care." Jessica continued, "The thing is, I've seen this before. My sister was in an abusive relationship, and some of the things your mom says. They remind me of how my sister used to talk. Always checking her phone, always worried about what he'll think, always making excuses for why she can't do things." She gave me my mom's new phone number and her address. I spent 3 days agonizing over whether to call. Finally, I did. Mom answered on the third ring, and her voice sounded so tired, so much older than I remembered. "Honey?" she said, and I could hear the hope and fear all mixed together. "Mom, I heard you collapsed at work. Are you okay?" There was a long pause. "I'm fine. It was just. I hadn't eaten enough that morning. Low blood sugar, you know?" But then something in her voice cracked, and she whispered, "I miss you so much." We talked for 2 hours. Really talked, for the first time in months. She told me about Oregon, about how isolated she felt, how Mike's family was cold to her. How he'd convinced her to quit her old job and move across the country, away from anyone who knew her. How the weight gain had accelerated since the wedding. Mike had bought her a honeymoon wardrobe in increasingly larger sizes, telling her she should embrace her curves and not worry about society's expectations. The breaking point came when she admitted something that made my blood run cold. "He measures me sometimes. Takes pictures to track my progress. He says it's for motivation, but..." Her voice trailed off. "Mom," I said carefully, "do you remember what we talked about? About feeder relationships?" This time, she didn't get angry. Instead, she was quiet for a long moment. Then, "I've been thinking about that. About a lot of things." She told me that last week, before she collapsed, she tried to suggest they cook dinner together instead of ordering takeout. Mike had exploded, accusing her of not appreciating how he took care of her, of being ungrateful. He'd stormed out and come back with 3 bags of fast food, standing over her until she ate all of it. "I threw up afterward," she whispered. "I was so full I was sick, but he seemed so happy watching me eat." My hands were shaking as I held the phone. "Mom, that's not love. That's not someone who cares about you." "I know," she said, and her voice broke. "I think I've known for a while now. But I don't know how to. I mean, we're married now. And I don't have anyone here. I gave up everything to move here with him. That's when I made a decision that surprised even me. What if you came to visit me? Just for a few days. Tell him you want to see me before the holidays." She was quiet for so long I thought the call had dropped. "Then, do you think? Would your dad let me stay there too? Just until I figure things out?" Yesterday, I picked my mom up from the airport. I barely recognized her. Jessica had been right, she had to be close to 280 pounds now, maybe more. She moved slowly, carefully, like every step hurt. But the worst part was her eyes. The vibrant, strong woman who had raised me was gone, replaced by someone who seemed scared of her own shadow. Mike thinks she's here for a 3-day visit. She's been texting him regularly, sending photos of us together, playing the part. But she's already been to see a doctor. Her blood pressure is dangerously high, she's pre-diabetic, and she has sleep apnea so severe the doctor was shocked she hasn't had a heart attack yet. She's scared to leave him. Scared of starting over at 46. Scared of admitting to everyone that she was wrong. But for the first time in over a year, I have hope. Because yesterday, when I suggested we go for a short walk around the block, she said yes. And when she got winded after just a few minutes, she didn't blame her asthma or her age. She said, "I used to be able to run 5 miles. What did I do to myself? I don't know what's going to happen next, but my mom is here, she's safe, and for the first time in a long time, she's asking the right questions. I'm not naive enough to think this will be easy, but maybe, just maybe, it's not too late." Update 3. It's been 6 weeks since my last update, and I wish I could say things have been getting steadily better, but the truth is more complicated than that. My mom has been staying with my dad and his fiancée, and while physically she's improving, she's lost about 15 pounds just from eating normal portions and taking short walks. Emotionally, she's been all over the place. The first 2 weeks were actually encouraging. She seemed determined to get healthy, was seeing a therapist, and even started talking about filing for divorce. But then Mike started calling constantly. At first, she wouldn't answer, but his messages became increasingly frantic and manipulative. He'd alternate between sobbing apologies and angry accusations, claiming she'd abandoned him, that she was having a mental breakdown, and that her family was poisoning her against him. The breaking point came 3 weeks ago when Mike showed up unannounced at my dad's house. Apparently, he'd driven straight from Oregon, a 20-hour drive, and was standing on the front porch at 6 a.m., demanding to see his wife. My dad called the police, but Mike hadn't technically done anything illegal, so they just asked him to leave the property. What happened next still makes my stomach turn. My mom, who had been making such progress, saw Mike standing there crying and begging her to come home, and something in her just broke. She went outside to talk to him, and within an hour, she was packing her things. I tried everything to stop her. I reminded her of what the doctor had said, of how unhappy she'd been, of how isolated and controlled she felt in Oregon. But Mike had clearly prepared for this. He had a whole speech about how he'd been seeing a therapist too, how he realized he'd been overprotective, and how he wanted to support her health journey. He even brought her flowers and a gym membership for a local fitness center in Oregon. See? My mom said, tears streaming down her face. He does care about me. He's trying to change. Against every instinct I had, I watched her get in the car with him and drive away. For 2 weeks, I barely heard from her. When she did call, it was brief and always with Mike in the background. She said she was doing great, that they were working on their marriage, that she'd started going to the gym. Everything sounded scripted, and there were long pauses like she was being coached on what to say. Then, last Tuesday, I got a call that changed everything. It wasn't from my mom, it was from Jessica, the nurse from my mom's work. "Your mom hasn't been to work in over a week," she said. Her supervisor called to check on her, and Mike answered the phone. He said she'd quit effective immediately because she wanted to focus on being a proper wife. My blood went cold. My mom had loved that job. It was one of the few things that had given her independence and a sense of purpose. But Jessica wasn't finished. "There's something else. My neighbor works at the gym where your mom supposedly has a membership. I asked her to check, and your mom has never even been there. Not once." That night, I couldn't sleep. Something was very wrong, but I didn't know what to do about it. Mike had made it clear I wasn't welcome, and my mom wasn't answering her phone when I tried calling directly. Then, Friday night, I got a text from a number I didn't recognize. "This is Sarah, Mike's ex-wife. We need to talk." I called her immediately. Sarah's story made my blood run cold. She'd been married to Mike for 4 years, and according to her, the weight gain pattern was exactly the same. It had started gradually, with Mike saying he preferred curvier women, then escalated to him actively sabotaging her attempts to stay healthy. "The isolation is part of it," Sarah explained. "He moved me away from my family, convinced me to quit my job, made me completely dependent on him. And the weight. God, the weight. I gained almost 100 pounds in 3 years. I ended up in the hospital twice, once for a heart episode, once for severe diabetes complications." She told me that Mike had a specific type of woman he targeted, recently divorced, vulnerable, usually with children he could use as leverage. "He's done this before me, too," she said. I found evidence of at least 2 other women. The most chilling part was what she told me next. "The gaining never stops. He tells them it will, gives them a target weight to make them feel like there's an end point, but there never is. He gets off on the control, on making them completely helpless and dependent." Sarah had managed to escape with help from her sister, but it took her 3 years to lose the weight and even longer to recover emotionally. "I tried to warn your mom," she said. "I found her on Facebook before the wedding and sent her a message, but she blocked me. Mike probably told her I was jealous or crazy." "Why are you telling me this now?" I asked. "Because I've been keeping tabs, and I'm worried. Mike's been posting photos of your mom on some disturbing websites. Fetish sites. I have screenshots if you need proof." I felt sick. This was so much worse than I'd imagined. Sarah gave me the address of a women's shelter about an hour from where my mom lives. "They specialize in situations like this," she said. "Financial abuse, isolation, all of it. But here's the thing, your mom has to want to leave. You can't force her." Yesterday, I made a decision that might have been stupid, but I couldn't live with the alternative. I drove to Oregon. Not to confront Mike, I'm not that reckless, but to try to see my mom when she was alone. I parked across the street from the grocery store nearest to their house and waited. After 3 hours, I saw Mike's truck pull up. He went inside alone, and I knew this was my chance. I called my mom's phone, praying she'd answer. She did, but her voice sounded different, smaller, more tired than before. "Mom, it's me. Don't hang up, please. I'm in Oregon, and I need to see you. Just for 5 minutes." There was a long pause. Then, in a whisper, "He's at the store. I can't. He tracks my car now. I'm parked behind the Walgreens on Maple Street. Can you walk there?" Another pause. "I'll try." 10 minutes later, I saw her walking toward me, and I had to grip the steering wheel to keep from crying out. In the 6 weeks since I'd seen her, she looked like she'd gained back all the weight she'd lost and then some. She was moving slowly, clearly struggling with each step. When she got in the car, she immediately started crying. "I'm sorry," she kept saying. "I'm so sorry. You were right about everything. She told me that the gym membership had been a lie, that Mike had thrown it away the day they got back to Oregon. She'd been basically imprisoned in the house. Mike had taken her car keys, citing safety concerns about her driving. He was working from home now, supposedly to spend more time with her, but really to monitor her every move. He makes me eat even when I'm not hungry, she whispered. If I don't finish everything he brings me, he gets angry. Really angry. And at night, he takes pictures. Says he's documenting my progress. But I think he's sharing them somewhere online. She knew about Sarah. Mike had told her his ex-wife was mentally unstable and trying to break up their marriage. But hearing it from me, seeing Sarah's evidence, something clicked. I want to leave, she said. I've wanted to leave for weeks, but I don't know how. I don't have any money, he controls all the accounts now. I can't even buy groceries without him. I gave her the information about the women's shelter, made her memorize the phone number. They can help you leave safely, I told her. But you have to call them. We talked for 20 more minutes before she got too anxious about Mike returning from the store. Before she got out of the car, she hugged me tighter than she had in years. I love you, she said. Whatever happens, remember that I love you and I'm proud of you for not giving up on me. That was 2 days ago. I haven't heard from her since, and I'm trying not to panic. I know these situations are dangerous, especially when someone is planning to leave. But I also know my mom is stronger than Mike has let her believe, and for the first time in our conversation, I heard determination in her voice instead of just defeat. I'm staying in Oregon for a few more days, just in case. The woman at the shelter said they have a bed available and a safety plan ready if my mom calls. All I can do now is wait and hope that this time, she'll choose herself over the man who's been slowly destroying her. I keep thinking about what she said, that she's proud of me for not giving up on her. The truth is, I almost did. There were so many times I wanted to just accept that this was her choice and walk away. But I'm glad I didn't. Because now I know this was never really her choice at all.